I'm Nathan Scott, and this is Breakdown, a series on game design. People tend to lump together a lot of games into the first-person shooter genre. You've got Overwatch in the same genre as story-heavy games like Half-Life. It's sort of an accurate descriptor, but distinctions like multiplayer versus single-player make for fundamentally different games. Several times I've heard people say that they don't like first-person shooters and then talk about why. But what they're really describing is why they don't like multiplayer shooters or single-player shooters. They play very differently, and part of the reason for that is the maps. First of all, multiplayer levels should have simple routes and more advanced routes for moving across the map. In single-player games, you generally don't play the same level more than once, so they're a lot more linear. The sense of progression comes from making your way through the level from one end to the other. But in multiplayer games, people who play the same map over and over need a sense of progression also. Once they've mastered the more straightforward, simple routes in a map, they can try to get better at the more advanced ones. Tribes Ascend sadly isn't too active anymore, but it was very good at that. Probably the best map to show that is Crossfire. If you're relatively new to the game or to the map, the easiest way to get to the opponent's base is straight through the middle. There aren't too many hills in your way, and you can scout out the flag from farther away to make it easier to capture. But as you get better at movement in the game, specifically skiing, which is how you go really fast in Tribes, a more effective and I think a more fun route is to go around the side, basically around the perimeter of the map. The hills are positioned perfectly to get a lot of speed if you're good enough, and you can rush in from the side and steal the flag that way. It's much harder to do, but much more satisfying when you pull it off. This is exactly the kind of thing advanced players want, and there's still a perfectly good route for players that don't want to take a difficult path. You can even come up with your own routes and tune your path to how you like it, which gives more of a sense of progression and keeps the map interesting for even longer. Second of all, multiplayer maps should have at least 2 entrances into battle areas. The level designer Bobby Ross, not related to the painter, defines a battle area as the place where 2 teams meet if they start running from their spawn points at the same speed. So in the Counter-Strike map Mirage, the main point where that happens is right in the middle of the map. It also often happens at the 2 bomb sites labeled A and B. Both teams will get to these places at roughly the same time, and all of them have at least 2 entrances. This makes it harder to camp them since enemies could come from multiple different directions, and you can't see all of them at once. Most of the other locations on the map don't need that. Hallways, tunnels, stairs, and so on generally only have 1 entrance. Those areas don't have as high concentrations of people, so they don't have as many entrances. Also, in multiplayer maps, you want to give a sense of constant motion. In single-player shooters, you can have dead ends with an item, or you can have parts that are designed to make you walk slower. In faster-paced multiplayer shooters, which is 90% of them, you want a feeling of consistent movement that never seems restrictive. One of the most popular maps in Overwatch is called King's Row. This map flows really well from one end to the other. You'll never run into a room and have to stop, turn around, and come back out. That kind of thing breaks your flow of motion and makes matches feel more sluggish. Instead, there's always somewhere to keep moving forward. If you run into a room to pick up an item, you can just keep going instead of having to backtrack. Essentially, multiplayer maps should be designed around the fact that people are going to be playing the same map over and over, probably dozens of times. So anything that's intended to be interesting once in a single-player game, you have to turn into something that will be interesting every single time. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching this episode of Breakdown.